Hey guys, so they've been talking about food shortages, and I just want to show you how their plan is working and going according to their script. Because first they set up the ports, then they set up the truck drivers with the high gas, and now look what's happening. Food distribution warehouses are burning down to the ground with no apparent reason. Why are these food warehouses being targeted? What's really going on? Let's take a look.
So that was pretty consistent. We heard that over and over again, gosh, around 1, 2 o'clock. Thankfully, everything has kind of been knocked down since then. All of the employees who were here at the facility were taken to a nearby facility to be questioned by the ATF, by the state fire marshal. They're trying to figure out exactly what caused this. Still no idea exactly what caused it. As far as fighting the fire, water was an issue early on. Take a listen to what the fire chief had to say about that a few hours ago.
There is a water issue. We've been pumping a lot of water for 3 hours now, or I don't even know what time it is, but we've been using a lot of water and we can't sustain that long term. So we're gonna have to cut back on our operations here, water consumption here, so we'll still have water for other places. So you may see additional fire trucks showing up. Those are to transport water in and out, which is gonna slow our operations down a little.
What the heck is this guy talking about? In the middle of a firefight, he's going to start talking about conserving water because they have been using the water the last 3 hours trying to put out the fire, and now they can't sustainably keep doing that. So they're going to transport water in to fight the fire because they're saving water for what did he say? He didn't say nothing. He just said, they need to save water for whatever. So this is just weird. Okay, you're going to let the building burn down. Really weird.
Also new this morning, thousands of dollars worth of food destroyed after a storage freezer caught on fire. It happened around 9:30 last night at a large warehouse on Mineiro Street. An SAFD battalion chief says the call was initially for a smoke investigation. Well, firefighters tracked the smoke to a warehouse. The fire was quickly put out once they found it, and the chief estimates around $150,000 or more in damages. Thankfully, no injuries were reported, and the cause of the fire is still unknown.
Everybody's concerned. Nobody knows what the future holds.
Uncertainty consumes the employees of an Eastern Oregon food processing plant, decimated by a fire earlier in the week.
We're still kind of in shock of like exactly what is going on. It feels like we're not being taken care of.
Javier Padilla and his coworkers at Shears Foods can't help but feel that way following a Thursday morning meeting with company leaders. KGW has learned employees were given a letter stating they're eligible for a minimum of 5 weeks' pay, at which point COBRA benefits kick in. Workers we spoke with believe it's only a matter of time before they're out of a job.
They just throwing us out there in the cold. They not really want to help us. They just want to just throw us out there and get rid of us.
You might recall that on Tuesday afternoon, flames tore through the Shears Foods plant, a plant that accounts for 1 in 30 jobs in Hermiston. A portable boiler powered by natural gas is to blame for the explosion that sent at least 6 people to the hospital. Fortunately, they were treated and released, but now they're facing the prospects of unemployment.
A lot of signatures were very upset people.
Workers have started a petition in hopes of saving their jobs and livelihoods in the wake of the devastating fire.
This job I really did love. I love this job. And when I went to work, I was happy.
It's the definition of job satisfaction, but it may be short-lived if the fire really is the end of the Shears Foods plant in Hermiston. And if so, this is the fear for the hundreds of workers who consider themselves family.
There's over 400 of us that have to go find a job. We have to basically fight our own family to go find this job. It's limited.
See, not only are these mysterious fires damaging the food supply, but they're also going to put people in unemployment and they're going to have to look for jobs. And they're not going to be able to find them probably in these small towns that all these warehouses are at. People are doing this on purpose. And most of these other fires, they're saying that they don't know how it started. They always figure out if it's arson or whatever. You see, they found out right away at this fire that it was a portable gas,
Some of the
whatever.
holes in the building at what those flames looked like inside. This building is 1.2 million square feet. This footage shows the building starting to collapse and some of the aftermath there as it did. Thankfully, everyone got out safely. Look at that row of trucks there. It looks like they're potentially melting from all of that heat. Here's a closer look at more of those trucks. You can actually see the fire causing them to bend and melt away. This video shows the firefighters tackling the blaze, spraying with ladder trucks all of that water down to tons of smoke coming from the building. Nearly 200 firefighters responded today from 18 different agencies.
Here at Taylor Farms is completely clear, and the facility has been given back to the company. I spoke with the CEO, Bruce Taylor, earlier today. He says that he hopes to have the facility back up and running by this time next year.
Next policy will be don't burn the building down.
Taylor Farms CEO Bruce Taylor says he believes this week's fire was caused by a welding maintenance accident.
So the fire was caused by welding, is that correct?
We're speculating. They were preparing the facility for us to move back in this weekend, and the speculation is I don't know where else fire would come from.
Fire stations from across Monterey County responded. 3 drones equipped with infrared technology were deployed. You can see the footage here showing the roof collapsing. The biggest concern when the fire broke out, a possible toxic ammonia leak, causing the worry of an explosion. Taylor doesn't think that would have happened.
There wasn't, in my mind, an ammonia leak. So what happened was that when the fire started, as part of our emergency protocol, we pumped down the lines that carry the ammonia to the refrigeration system. And whenever you pump down the lines, there's some residual ammonia in those lines. You can't get it all out. And so that's what leaked.
Operations at the facility were supposed to resume tomorrow. Now processing and packaging will move to their sister plant in Yuma, Arizona. Taylor Farms will continue to get their produce from Salinas growers. About 700 employees that work here don't have a place to work, but they will be kept on the payroll full time.
There will be no layoffs. They'll be paid for 40 hours a week.
So even though the CEO got in front of our faces and told us that those employees will get 40-hour checks, that's only if you transfer to the new facility, the other facility. You're not going to get that for a year until they wait for it to open back up.
Tonight, a massive cleanup is underway inside a High Point Walmart after a fire ripped through part of the store.
No one was hurt, but one person is charged with arson. The store is closed, and a lot of people are left wondering, what now?
You see what I mean when I say people are doing this on purpose? It's like random people are just starting fires for the hell of it. No, okay? They've all been sent there to do what they're doing, because they're not just doing it just because they woke up one day and said, oh, let me go start a fire. That's not what's happening here. And you see they're closing stores too.
Witnesses tell me this parking lot was packed as police say a fire was intentionally started inside. Now, customers driving in and driving back out tonight, I saw many of them learning as this Walmart will be closed for the foreseeable future. Just imagine all those employees and people having to run out, the scary moments as flames grew as high as the ceiling. A piercing fire alarm sounding in the High Point Walmart off South Main Street.
I saw the whole thing.
Jennifer Hendren says the flames were so high
It just started shooting up to the ceiling.
the High Point Fire Department says the fire was set on purpose in the men's department.
It was like 3 racks of clothes caught on fire.
That's when everyone ran.
It was like 5-10 feet up, like it was actually reaching the roof of Walmart.
High Point police arrested 26-year-old Daniel Daly. He's charged with arson and theft. The store is badly damaged.
All the smoke coming out of this building, it was pretty bad.
Instead of fire alarms, you'll now hear large fans around Walmart trying to clear the significant amount of smoke. And you'll see a lot of this entering and exiting as many faithful Walmart shoppers
Like once or twice a week.
are scrambling to find somewhere else to shop.
It's going to take me about 10 or 15 minutes to get to the other Walmart.
Well, new tonight, Mobile investigators now believe multiple people are behind the fires at 2 different Walmart stores in the Port City this week. Fox 10's Morella Porter joins us live in studio. Morella, MPD now releasing new photos of the suspects.
Yeah, Lee, investigators say the crimes are connected. One person caught on surveillance after several small fires were set inside the Beltline Walmart Thursday. And just 24 hours later, at least 2 more people are suspected of starting another large fire at the Rangeline Walmart. Tonight, at least 3 people suspected of starting multiple fires inside 2 Mobile Walmarts on back-to-back days. Pictures and video shared with Fox 10 News showing a massive flame touching the ceiling. Smoke filling several aisles of the hardware section at the Rangeline store yesterday, where police say an accelerant was used to start the blaze.
People could have died, so yeah, that's kind of scary.
This just 24 hours after an arsonist set several small fires inside the Beltline Walmart Thursday. A video of charred toilet paper and what appears to be cardboard shared with Fox 10 News. The 2 crimes believed to be connected. Police say this man seen walking out of the Beltline store is suspected of setting the first blaze on Thursday. Investigators say 2 others captured in these surveillance stills are behind yesterday's fire in Tillman's Corner.
They even got surveillance footage of these people. But do you think they're going to find them? No, they're never going to find these people.
Fire crews put out a fire at a warehouse that houses food trucks in Sunnyside this afternoon. Calls started coming in just before 1:30. You could see smoke from across the metro area for about a half an hour before the crews actually got that fire out. Luckily, no one was hurt. Fire stayed contained to 1 building. Fire crews say they don't yet know how it started, but they're still investigating.
So the even crazier thing is that farmers have been warning about this food shortage for months. But what has our government done about it? Nothing. But they're going to have the problem reaction solution, when this is all done and said. But let's take a look.
We're going to see a lot of empty shelves and a lot more higher prices. For those people who haven't been to the grocery store lately, the prices are already rising and they're going to continue to go up. This is the time where America needs to pay attention to what's going on to farmers. Because you may not need a doctor or a lawyer or something like that, but you need a farmer every day.
Corn's up 9%, soybeans up 66% this year, wheat up 22.7%. Obviously, you talked about how the American people are also paying the price for this. What's the worst case scenario? Is it a baby formula shortage for everything from cereal to ice cream?
Yes, and you're going to see a lot of shortages in all those commodities that you showed up on the screen, from Kellogg's Corn Flakes. Corn is used to make those things.
Yeah.
The local bread, wheat is used to make those things. And all of the other additives that we use.
The picture he painted was so bleak. Right now, roughly half of the amount of corn, soybeans, and wheat that are normally in the ground are there. So you have a potential for November or December, if the weather doesn't change and if farmers aren't able to get funding to buy more seed and to buy new equipment and to continue to buy diesel fuel, which has gone through the roof. If they're not able to do that, you have this compounding effect of big shortages. And you talk, Adrian, for example, about corn and the potential there. It's everything from soda because of corn syrup. Almost every product we buy food-wise has some form of corn syrup in it. It goes way, way beyond just not having corn on the cob, your local barbecue. And it's not just in the United States, because you've got wheat shortages as well that come a lot from Ukraine because of their wheat supply. The Brits right now, Bank of England warns of an apocalyptic global food shortage. And typically, Adrian, we're used to the British being reserved.
Is there a way to avert a crisis here?
That's really the trillion-dollar question for all of us, to not have to go back 100 years in American life. And if you think about the past couple of years have taught us that we never worry about the right thing and that the unexpected does happen. 6 months ago, if we talked about a baby formula shortage, everybody would have sort of laughed at you because it's just not something that America has ever had to anticipate.
This consumer alert to warn you about tonight, a major baby formula recall after an infant has died and others have gotten sick.
As CBS 2's Bradley Blackburn reports, the recall has left parents scrambling to find replacements.
Elecare is one of 3 Abbott brands now under recall. They also include Similac and Alimentum, all powder formulas that were manufactured at the same plant in Michigan with expiration dates after March 31st. Federal officials are now investigating 4 reports of infants who were hospitalized after consuming Abbott formula, including one who died. All the children had Chronobacter or Salmonella infections.
A Michigan manufacturing plant that produced baby formula had a long history of safety regulation violations. Yet it remained open, and it was only after a baby died that the company issued a recall.
Store shelves or signs maxing out how much you can buy.
Formula is tough to find right now because of recent recalls that were announced by the manufacturer Abbott Nutrition, which makes very popular brands like Similac, Alimentum, and Elecare.
The recalls come after at least 2 infant deaths and several illnesses were potentially tied to formula. The cases involved an extremely dangerous bacteria called Chronobacter sakazaki and Salmonella Newport.
Chronobacter is extremely dangerous. It has a mortality rate as high as 80% in infants.
But shockingly, a Consumer Reports investigation found that the Food and Drug Administration knew about the problems at the Abbott plant in Michigan back in September, where the recalled products were manufactured.
The FDA didn't warn consumers about Abbott's infant formula until it conducted a follow-up inspection last month. And we still don't know why.
When it comes to the Abbott deal, you've got about a 2-week window of the plant trying to get back online, and then another 6 to 8 weeks, they say, for the full stock of formula to begin flowing once again onto store shelves. Probably what the real takeaway from the baby formula crisis is just how one minor thing, meaning one plant closure in America, can have this enormous effect on something that we take for granted. You don't really have to take out that much supply anymore because there's not this overabundance. Walmart and others have gotten really good at just-in-time ordering. You don't have to take out that much supply from the system, in this case, one plant of baby formula, for there to be mass shortages around the country.
I'm learning a little bit more about an FDA report that found multiple problems at a Southwest Michigan plant that makes baby formula. Abbott's plant in Sturgis is tied to a recent cluster of infant hospitalizations, including 2 baby deaths due to a rare bacterial infection.
A month after Abbott recalled 3 major brands of baby formula made at its plant in Sturgis, it's still unclear what specifically was to blame.
These latest reports still leave a lot of questions unanswered around how exactly did the formula become contaminated in this outbreak.
Sarah Sorsher is with an independent consumer advocacy group. She says the report shows Abbott failed to maintain a sanitary facility, with FDA inspectors finding multiple locations with Chronobacter bacteria.
They flagged that there was issues with water dripping and pooling in areas where it could cause risks, evidence of equipment that was being poorly maintained that had cracks, that drying equipment that hadn't been tested to ensure that it was thoroughly drying the formula.
Abbott recalled formula made at its Sturgis plant back in 2010 as well, after small bugs were found in one section of the plant. We value the trust patients and caregivers place in us, and ensuring the safety and quality of our products is our top priority. No Chronobacter, Sakazaki, or Salmonella was found in any of our testing or products distributed to consumers. In addition, the unique genetic makeup of the Chronobacter Sakazaki microbes found in non-product areas at the Sturgis facility did not match the Chronobacter Sakazaki microbes from the reported cases. Abbott says it is working to make changes, saying, quote, "We have already begun implementing corrective actions and enhancements at the facility, leveraging new technology and strengthening our processes to give parents and customers renewed confidence in the quality of manufacturing at our Sturgis plant when we restart operations there."
Farmers say that they're really on the rocks, especially smaller farmers who are the backbone of the breadbasket of America collectively, who provide so much of the soybeans and the wheat and the corn that we all eat. Is there a way out? Is there a way this doesn't happen? Sure, the weather turns, diesel prices go down, banks loosen up loans for these farmers and the like. But a lot of farmers that we've talked to aren't putting stuff in the ground because they just can't afford to.
Farmers across the country are destroying millions of pounds of fresh produce.
as the coronavirus has majorly disrupted the food supply chain. Initially, consumers hoarded items like rice, beans, and frozen foods. The panic buying resulted in empty aisles, and some wondered if the U.S. was in danger of a food shortage. That's far from the reality, though, especially when it comes to produce.
So it was in the middle of March when they shut down all of the restaurants, and then all the theme parks shut down, cruise lines shut down.
In a matter of days, many farms lost the majority, if not their entire market channel.
The coronavirus immediately changed that, but the farmers had already planted their crops. So now they're destroying them, plowing cabbage, lettuce, and other fresh produce intended for restaurants and schools straight back into the ground.
Yeah, I'd say 25% of the crop that's grown in our industry is probably not being able to make it to either retail or food service. Probably the most trying time that we've probably ever had since the Great Depression here in Salinas Valley and farming.
So why are farmers still destroying their crops?
The supply and demand in an overall sense is exactly the same. The system just isn't set up to be that nimble.
A quarter of all food consumed and over half of all food dollars go to the food service sector. So many operations are designed specifically with restaurants in mind.
It's not easy to switch those factories, the packaging in those factories from restaurant or commercial to consumer.
They're not set up to run at 200%. They're set up to run efficiently at 100%, so they're maxed out now at 130, 140%.
And when it comes to perishables, like the lettuce grown at Braga Fresh, it's not possible to store it until distribution centers have capacity, or until the economy opens back up. All this means that tens of millions of pounds of fresh produce are either rotting in fields or being destroyed, even as food banks are facing a 70% average increase in demand, as the crisis has left millions of Americans newly unemployed. 5% of the country's milk supply is currently being dumped, and hundreds of thousands of eggs are being smashed daily, as dairy farmers and poultry farmers deal with similar supply chain challenges. Even farmers who grow primarily for grocery outlets are being hit hard, as they've seen wholesale prices for produce fall. Even if the supply chain bottlenecks were solved, the demand for certain items might never keep up with supply until the restaurant business has fully recovered. Instead, many are hoping that government interventions and aid packages will help to carry them through this rough patch. In mid-April, the White House announced their long-awaited $19 billion farm relief package, which sets aside $16 billion in direct payments to farmers and ranchers and $3 billion in government purchases of dairy, meat, and produce, intended for distribution to food banks.
Absolutely, no question, it's all going to help, but there's no way it's going to take each individual business back to where they would have been in 2020 absent all of this.
Though many are upset that the program caps payments at $125,000 per product and $250,000 total per farmer. For the next 6 months, the U.S. Department of Agriculture plans to spend approximately $100 million per month purchasing excess produce and $100 million on dairy and meat. These items will be combined into variety boxes to be distributed at food banks and other community organizations. This will be a boon to the millions of Americans facing food insecurity as a result of the pandemic. But farmers say the government purchases won't come close to solving their food waste woes. In any case, many say that providing farmers with the support they need to weather this crisis is paramount to the future of the agricultural industry and our nation's food security as a whole.
If a lot of farms go out of business, we're going to lose the land base, we're going to lose the know-how, and that will have an impact with our next crisis. We need to keep farmers in business and on the land.
Bill Gates has been snatching up 242,000 acres of farmland across the U.S., enough to make him the top private farmland owner in America. According to the Land Report, the tech billionaire has been purchasing agricultural land for years, building a massive portfolio of farmland in 18 states. His largest holdings are more than 69,000 acres in Louisiana, almost 48,000 acres in Arkansas, and about 20,500 acres in Nebraska. Additionally, he has a stake in 25,750 acres of traditional land in Phoenix, Arizona, which is being developed as a new suburb. It's not clear how Gates' farmland is being used or whether any of the land is being set aside for conservation. This is not Gates' only foray into agriculture. In 2008, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation announced $306 million in grants to promote high-yield, sustainable agriculture among farmers in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. The foundation also invested in the development of supercrops resistant to climate change and higher yield dairy cows. While Gates may be the country's biggest farmland owner, he's not the largest individual landowner. According to the Land Report's list of the top 100 American landowners, Liberty Media chair John Malone is the largest landowner with 2.2 million acres of ranches and forests.
The French fries you eat at McDonald's are grown by Bill Gates. Fact, the multi-billionaires are responsible for one of the world's most popular fried foods, the humble McDonald's French fries. Potatoes used by the U.S. fast food giant, carrots and onions are among the fresh produce grown across farmland owned by the Gates. In less than a decade, the couple, who recently announced their divorce, have invested in more than 108,900 hectares of farmland across 18 states in the U.S. Phenomenally, the total land size owned by the Gates duo is almost the size of Hong Kong. From soybeans, corn, cotton and rice grown across about 28,300 hectares in Louisiana to producing potatoes across more than 5,700 hectares of land in Washington, fields so huge that they are visible from space, the agriculture investment portfolio makes Bill Gates the largest private owner of farmland in the U.S. The acres were purchased through a constellation of companies linking to the Gates Investment Group, Cascade Investment. The agriculture sector is important, he wrote.
Farming seems mighty easy when your plow is a pencil and the nearest cornfield is over 1,000 miles away.
The concerns Nebraska Farm Bureau has with President Biden's executive order on setting aside 30% of our land and water for conservation is that we really don't know what he means by either set aside or put it in the conservation. So we're asking for clarification from the administration.
In the letter sent to President Biden, the president of the Nebraska Farm Bureau expresses his frustration with the communication the ag industry has received from the White House so far, stating given the lack of detail in the executive order itself, as well as Interior Secretary Haaland's inability or unwillingness to answer questions about the executive order during her confirmation hearing, more information on the executive order and its goals are desperately needed before any action by the administration be taken.
At this point, we haven't received any correspondence from our letter and correspondence from our members asking the same question.
So what could this executive order mean for farmers?
Taken to the extreme would be the federal government coming in and acquiring private property and asking us or telling us that we have to do certain conservation practices on our property that we own or the water. And so that's the top of the concern, that there'll be a gross government federal overreach into private property rights.
And how could this impact us?
If we were to take 1/3 of the grazing land away in this state, beef would become very hard to find. If we were to take 1/3 of our row crop land out, the prices of commodities would be so high.
Farmers have different conservation efforts in place so that their crops and livestock can flourish, such as windbreaks, terraces to keep water and soil from rolling down the hill, and cover crops to put nutrients back into the land, just to name a few.
When it comes to agriculture in the Midwest is that during the summer and the peak of corn production, we produce 40% more oxygen than the Amazon rainforest.
And that then means that there's going to be shortages. It's not like the government can intervene at some point. There's no some great stockpile of corn somewhere, number one. And number two, once you pass the growing season and the planting season, you can't suddenly put a lot more corn in the ground come August.
Is it true that the government is paying farmers to destroy their crops? And the simple answer to that is yes, they are.
I initially heard about the government paying farmers to destroy their crops. I thought it was a load of bullshit. Well, lo and behold, we received our destruction notice the other day. So basically there was two options on how to destroy the crop. The government could fly on Agent Orange, or we could manually destroy the crop ourselves. We put too much blood, sweat, and tears in it to let them destroy it, so we decided to manually do it ourselves. Basically, it said if we used a lawnmower to destroy the crop, we could receive an extra $600 an acre. Something about the low carbon footprint or something. So that's what we're doing. Now, they really didn't tell us how many acres to destroy. They just said, get after it and we'll be watching you from satellite. We'll give you a call when you've destroyed enough. So I better get back after it.
Yep. Plowing it up. Government said they'd pay us $3,800 an acre. Hey, that's better than what Milo prices are right now, so getting her done.
This shows all the moving parts of the combine. If a buzzer goes off, that means there's something going wrong.
Mike Stacy is finally feeling a little flush with cash. So much so, he bought himself a new combine. Well, technically it's a used combine, but it's new to him.
Can I ask how much it cost?
Before the trade-in value was $390,000.
Stacy is an Illinois farmer benefiting from higher corn and soybean prices. And as farmers come to the Farm Progress Show to kick the tires in person for the first time in 2 years, equipment makers hope they're all in a spending mood.
Everybody's just
land.
glad
Farming is location, location, location. Growing is great in this part of Illinois, but in other parts of the U.S., drought is so severe that farmers won't have much of a crop. And those that do are finding the cost of doing business has also gone up. But there are a couple things keeping farmers up at night, which don't have anything to do with the price of equipment or even the weather. The first is concerns that Congress will get rid of ethanol in gasoline, and almost half the corn grown in this country goes into ethanol. The second is potential changes to the tax code, which could force someone who inherits a farm to possibly have to sell the farm just to pay the taxes. The president says he's not going to let that happen. A lot of people around here aren't so sure.
So been farming 49 years. We grow corn, soybeans, and wheat. If you can have something growing year-round is the main objective, really, to a healthy soil.
Farmers planting cover crops so they can reduce the carbon dioxide in the air and get paid for doing it. Look.
It's not so much about the money that we're getting out of it, it is how we can take and make our farm move forward so that way our next generation has an opportunity to be able to come back and do what we love to do.
Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey has warned that a surge in food costs could have apocalyptic consequences.
I'm afraid the one that I am going to sound, I guess, rather apocalyptic about is food. I have to tell you that, I think this is a big concern.
He says that's worrying both for the UK and the developing world, and urged governments to free up the flow of crops from Ukraine, because while the country does have food in store, it can't get it out at the moment. That's led wheat prices to surge in recent weeks, and that contributes to the price of other foodstuffs like eggs and chicken, because wheat is used as feed. The bank expects the UK economy to contract in the years ahead and for hundreds of thousands of people to lose their jobs. Ministers have criticised the central bank for not doing enough fast enough to control inflation.
The first three things that any normal nation needs and thinks about obsessively are food, water, and energy. The Build Back Better agenda was the opposite of that. Build Back Better was the neoliberal version of flying cars. It was a dreamy Christmas list of luxuries that for a moment in time seemed almost within reach.
With regard to food shortage, yes, we did talk about food shortages. And it's going to be real. The price of these sanctions is not just imposed upon Russia. It's imposed upon an awful lot of countries as well, including European countries and our country as well. And because both Russia and Ukraine have been the breadbasket of Europe in terms of wheat, for example. Just to give you one example.
Food shortages, Biden said, quote, they're going to be real. Once again, in case you missed it, to repeat, food shortages. Not in Sudan, in Cincinnati, in Reno, in Spokane, and Norfolk, and of course in our big cities too, where not a single person who was born here has any idea what a food shortage is. Our problem has always been having too much food. Now we won't have enough. We know that because the President of the United States just told us that on camera. So what is this going to mean? How do food shortages affect a country? Well, if you're interested, go online and read about it. All of recorded history will answer your question. A food shortage is not like deciding to skip dessert. It's not a diet. It's not voluntary. A food shortage is different. It's scary. Food shortages topple governments. They turn moderates into revolutionaries. A food shortage is a big deal. You don't want one. But now we're getting one, just a little over a year into Joe Biden's presidency. Those ingredients are necessary to put food on your table at a price you can afford. If you don't have those ingredients, what do you get? Food shortages. Fertilizer bills are expected to jump around 15% just this year, and they could go higher. Some farmers say they are already seeing fertilizer prices go much higher.
Mike Gunderson's family has been farming wheat, soybeans, and corn on this land since the 1950s. He expects the weather to throw him a curveball in farming, but not a war.
All the stuff in Ukraine, and there's so much volatility in the market.
The U.S. imports $10.3 billion worth of fertilizer for crops. $1.3 billion of that comes from Russia, which is now off the market. The Minnesota Association of Wheat Growers says farmers lay down fertilizer at least twice a year.
There's a lot of fertilizers that are 4 and 5x more expensive than they were a year ago. Fertilizer has drastically outpaced the rate of inflation.
Russia's ban on fertilizer is scheduled to last until the end of the year. And while supply is already tight this year, it's the future many are worried about.
So sanctions have thrown American agriculture into profound turmoil and will cause, again, as the president has told us out loud, food shortages. But it's not just sanctions. There are a lot of reasons. It's not just the war in Ukraine. In response to energy and food shortages, the Biden administration is shutting down domestic oil and gas production. That makes food more expensive. It makes everything else more expensive. And as the pressure on American farmers rises and as food becomes scarcer and more expensive in this country, that same administration is allowing the government of China to buy up this country's farmland. Chinese investors own nearly 200,000 acres of U.S. ag land valued at least $2 billion. Now, they're doing this in part with the help of subsidies paid for by U.S. taxpayers. And Chinese investors are continuing to buy more every single year. Again, food, water, energy. That's what you need for a country. The Chinese understand that. As Congressman Dan Newhouse put it, quote, the current trend in the United States is leading us toward the creation of a Chinese-owned agricultural land monopoly in our country, the most productive farmland in the world, now owned by what we used to call our main global rival, and I think we can now say with the realignment in progress is our main global enemy. Would the Chinese government permit American investors to buy its country's farmland or water resources? No sane country would do that. And no foreign entity should be allowed to control America's critical natural resources.
Gas prices are jacking up the cost of boat rentals and charters, leaving captains like Cody Kinney with two choices: cancel charters that are not profitable or increase ticket prices. The increases are not just hitting the tourism industry.
From our boats that go out fishing to our trucks that deliver the product, everything that we use to run our business, we see at least a 35% increase.
Nello Casarino runs Galveston Shrimp Company. He says passing those prices on to the consumer is not a reliable option.
Because the consumer at some point will stop buying it. It turns into a ripple effect where the plants have to lay off employees, trucks stop moving.
All part of our food supply now imperiled through a remarkable combination of negligence and terrible decision-making. Not just by this administration, by previous administrations, but brought to the point of crisis by Joe Biden, which are a direct result of policy from the White House, a policy whose intended effect is still not clear.
Meat is expected to get even more expensive, and one local farmer says we may soon be facing more serious food shortages.
There are all sorts of contributing factors that can lead to rising costs for food items, even food shortages. One thing that could cause a major ripple effect: the price of corn. A farmer in a field may look like a charming scene, but they have to worry about budgets like any other business owner.
This year, I've already exceeded last year's budget for fertilizer.
Farmer and Marana Town Councilman John Pose says his costs have gone up across the board. So even though he is selling wheat, cotton, and corn at higher prices, the budget isn't balancing out like it should.
Well, the fertilizer price just took every hope of a profit out of there and added cost to it.
The rising price of corn will lead to higher prices for the many items made with corn byproducts, but Bose says that's not even the worst part.
It's also animal feed, right? Cows, chicken, pigs, all that kind of stuff. So you're talking about a product that has the supply of, or the lack of, has huge ramifications for, our country.
The war in Ukraine also reportedly added to the strain on the global market for corn and other grains.
So it's kind of economics 101. If the supply tightens, the price goes up.
Arizona Farm Bureau Outreach Director Julie Murphy agrees more expensive corn will lead to more expensive meat products.
Where this impacts you and I as consumers is we're going to see a continuing increase in meat prices in the meat market. And we've maybe already felt that pinch.
Post paints an even more ominous picture. He says farmers and ranchers will need to scale back operations to offset costs.
I think we're facing severe shortages in food in the upcoming year for sure.
Post says instead of supply chain issues making it hard to put products on the shelves, the next round of shortages will be from there just not being enough food produced.
It's mealtime in the nation of Yemen, but Ghalib al-Najjar isn't eating so that his children have enough food. He says he and his family live like ants or fish. We eat what we can find. Experts warn that in the months ahead, food is going to be harder to find in many more nations. A perfect storm of several problems is decimating the world food supply. It's being called the biggest food crisis since World War II. An estimated 285 million people face starvation. The head of the World Food Program, former South Carolina Governor David Beasley, says the world food supply already faced a catastrophe before the war in Ukraine.
We're so short of funds already, and now with Ukraine, we've got 50% rations for people, for example, in Yemen. Niger, 50% rations. Chad, 50% rations. And 50% don't have anything, those who are in extreme need.
In the U.S., Americans have seen food costs rise almost 10% over last year, the steepest increase in 40 years. And experts predict it will lead to an increase in malnutrition among America's poor. In the developing world, however, it's become a matter of life and death. Russia and Ukraine together produce almost 1/3 of the world's wheat, but Ukrainian farmers have been sidelined by the war, and Russia has banned exports.
They've got to be planting again and harvesting again. If they don't, then you're going to have a global supply problem.
And the war in Ukraine is only the latest of many problems to hit the world food supply. Food prices were already high from soaring inflation and fuel costs. Fertilizer prices are now 40% higher than a month ago before the invasion of Ukraine, which along with high fuel prices makes it too expensive for some farmers to plant crops this year.
We've never seen these type of increases in fertilizer. You're talking 300-400% increases in a 14-month period.
Add to that a drought that damaged this spring's U.S. winter wheat harvest. In China, severe flooding late last year wrecked the wheat harvest and has the communist government trying to buy up as much of the world's supply as possible. And now a growing list of nations have banned agricultural exports to other nations. Reverend Eugene Cho of Bread for the World says the U.S. needs to do more to fight global hunger, asking Congress to approve $3.8 billion in supplemental emergency funding.
Inflation hitting a new 40-year high in the month of March. Americans especially getting hit hard at the grocery store. The price of items like dried beans, canned vegetables, flour, all up better than 10% from the same time just 1 year ago. What's going on with the price of food? We're looking at double-digit increases in terms of the price. You are bringing into this conversation a much bigger issue and a potential food shortage crisis. Are you talking about a food shortage crisis where Americans are not going to have access to food, never mind paying up in the double digits for the price of food?
When I taste this, it's like open my new attitudes about food. That insect is one of the food that's eatable, and it's tasty too. It's not weird as you thought. Yeah. And the feeling, it's crispy. It's like a snack. Yeah, I like it.
In Thailand, there's a long history of local populations, of people consuming insects, and they continue to do in large amounts, but it's essentially as a snack, not a part of dishes, not a part of cuisine. So we're interested in moving people away from seeing insects as purely a snack to being a part of a gourmet and a delicious cuisine.
Yes, I enjoy cooking insect. Because it's new. It's a new thing, you know. You live in the world, you need to learn the new thing. I cook with the pork, the chicken for a long time ago, but for the insect, it's a new world of cooking, new lesson.
นิดๆหน่อยๆไม่ใช่ปัญหาหรอกนั้นน่ะสวยอยู่นะคะสวยพอมาสวยไหมสวยนะสวยมันไม่สวยข้างนอก20 ปีแล้วใช้ได้เนอะครับผมเพราะว่ารู้จักหมดว่าครับผม
รู้สึกแปลกใจค่ะรู้สึกดีรู้สึกว้าวเลยเพราะว่าเราก็หวังว่าคนจะบริโภคแมลงของเราเยอะขึ้นอะไรอย่างเงี้ยค่ะก็ทำให้เราขายของได้ดีขึ้นแล้วก็มีอาหารใหม่ๆมาทดแทนอาหารเดิมๆที่เราเคยทานกันบ้างอะไรอย่างเงี้ยค่ะดีค่ะ
I still have a barrier, some kind of something in my mind that still stops me from eating it. But yeah, it kind of tastes like normal, nothing like normal food, but yeah.
There is obviously the shock value with insects, and that might bring some people in through the door. But essentially, for the longevity or the sustainability of the restaurant and for the sector of edible insects as a whole, it has to stand on its own legs, so to speak. It has to be attractive, it has to be delicious, and it has to actually add something to cuisine as we know it.
This is how most new kinds of apples are born these days. Far from an orchard, in a lab. Scientists at Washington State University have been on a quest to breed the perfect apple for more than 20 years, and they think they finally got it. The Cosmic Crisp hit the market on December 1st, 2019. It was the largest launch of an apple in American history, coming after $500 million in investment, $10 million in marketing, and 2 decades of breeding and testing.
We have to do things differently than other folks do, or else we're like everyone else. It's made from algae, seaweed, and kelp, but it eats like shrimp.
think we need new solutions to find a sustainable way to enjoy shrimp.
Algae and seaweed, kelp and algae.
Algae is this amazing thing on our planet that comes in a variety of shapes and sizes.
Looks good. And it's really the future of food. It's where we're going in the food world.
Algae is more prevalent in our daily lives than you might think. Sushi and nori, you can even find algae in things like our toothpaste or ice cream. So it's something that's already here and we use it. It's time, I think, now to explore how we can take it to the next level and use it for other exciting food applications.
This ingredient is our macroalgae extract and gives our shrimp its structure. If you think of the kelp forest, kelp that washes up on the beach, and how they can be a little bit slimy, this is essentially the sliminess that comes from that kelp. This algae oil right here is very similar to the cooking oils that you'll find in your kitchen. It does have an oceany smell to it. It's briny, almost umami. If you've ever had a seaweed snack, that taste that you get is very much embodied in this oil. Many chefs will tell you that you eat with your eyes before your nose and mouth. So it's really important to make sure our shrimp looks like shrimp. So as soon as people see our product, it needs to read shrimp for them. The shrimp eat a red algae, and that's what gives it its red stripes. The same is true for why salmon are pink. It comes from an algae. So we take an extract from that red algae and we dilute it in water and then eventually apply it to our shrimp to give us that same beautiful red color. If I mixed all these things together as they are right now, you would just get an interesting, fishy smelling mush. So a lot happens behind the scenes.
Fire an order of the vegan shrimp. It handles like real shrimp. You can overcook it and you can make it tough. You know, real shrimp does the same thing. It is the future. It's what we as chefs are looking for. New materials, new sources of nourishment. And the algae shrimp is providing that for us. I'm bringing you the future to try, gentlemen.
We have a great opportunity to tackle other seafood. So other shellfish like crab, scallops, lobster, and then eventually evolving into fin fish like tuna and salmon.
Feeling hungry? Would you eat a steak grown in a laboratory? Would you take a bite of a cheeseburger made by a scientist? Technology startups and scientists are placing big bets on lab-grown meats. Currently, livestock is responsible for around 15% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. We could see this number rise in the coming decades. According to the World Economic Forum, the world population is expected to be close to 10 billion by 2050. That is a lot of mouths to feed. This population boom and rising incomes will cause demand for meat products to rise by as much as 88%. To feed the world's growing demand for meat, we already use around 27% of the world's arable land to raise livestock. We need to find a more sustainable way of satiating this rising demand. One path to the future of sustainable eating could start with lab-grown meats. Not to be confused with plant-based meat alternatives, lab-grown meats are cultured in the lab using cells which were originally derived from live animals. In theory, this cultured meat would use fewer of the planet's resources, and no animals need to be slaughtered in the process. Cultured meat might become a regular part of our diets in the coming years, making its way onto the dinner table and appearing in some of our favorite restaurants. Nonetheless, the prospect of this Meat 2.0 raises a lot of complex social, ethical, and technical questions. And, simply put, some people find the idea of eating meat from a lab weird. First, a technician takes cells from a live animal. These cells are grown up in a lab to permanently establish a culture called a cell line. Once a good cell line has been established, a sample is introduced into a bioreactor. This is essentially a culture medium which contains all the materials the cells need to grow. The cells in the bioreactor grow and multiply exponentially and are then harvested. Once harvested, the meat cells can be formed into any number of unstructured items, from patties to sausages. In the future, it may be possible to use technologies such as 3D printing and edible scaffolds to create particular cuts of meat, like chicken legs and T-bone steak. However, this is likely to be much more difficult than producing ground meat. The technology's first public proof of concept appeared in 2013 in the Netherlands. Partially funded by Google co-founder Sergey Brin, Dr. Mark Post and his researchers at the University of Maastricht spent a little over $300,000 creating the world's first cultured meat hamburger. It was described as like an animal protein cake. The burger was even taste tested live on television and got positive reviews in general. However, the lab-grown burger lacked one central element: fat. In the meat that we eat every day, there are different types of muscles, connected tissues, lipids, bones, and fat that give flavor and texture to the food. To this day, one of the biggest challenges with lab-grown meat is giving them the flavors and textures that you might expect from biting into a steak or burger. However, this has not stopped entrepreneurs and scientists from trying. Today, startup companies are working to bring lab-grown beef, chicken, and even fish to dinner tables around the world. Aside from the regulatory hurdles, these startups need to find a way to scale up cultured meat while reducing costs. Moreover, there are other technological challenges. These include developing better cell lines and cheaper culture media, reducing the time it takes for the cells to grow, and scaling up what are now small-scale operations. They will also need to find an alternative to the use of fetal bovine serum, which is derived from cow fetuses and is added to culture media. The use of the serum is a major barrier for an industry that is trying to take animals out of the equation. The cultured meat also needs to taste good or be close enough to more traditional dishes that the public won't mind that it comes from a lab. Until cell-based meat makes the leap from the lab to your dinner table, there are some delicious plant-based meat options you can consider that are gaining traction. Companies like Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods offer customers meat-free options made from water, soy protein, coconut, sunflower oil, and natural flavorings. Some argue that the current appeal and adoption of plant-based meats by major restaurants could be a precursor to the coming age of cultured meat dishes.
Having food shortages opens the doors for many things, but the main thing that it opens the door for is bootleg stuff. Fake food, fake drinks, fake alcohol, fake everything. So, as you could see in this here, they're making fake alcohol like there's no tomorrow. Like, we don't even know if the alcohol that we buy in the store today is real. Like, how can we tell? We can't tell. So, like I say, now we're gonna be, prone to maybe drinking some of these toxic substances or eating some of them and not even know that we're doing it while we're doing it. You got to wonder why all these people make bootleg everything. Like, everything that's ever made in life is bootlegged. Somebody's bootlegged it and made a fake copy because everybody copies each other. History repeats itself over and over again, just like bootlegging.
वो रंग हम बाज़ार से लाते हो, शाम को जो बासी सब्जी बच जाती है उसमें हम लगाते हैं, स्प्रे करते हैं और फिर वो ताज़ी सब्जी में मिला के और हम बेक आते हैं उसे, फिर कोई मालूम नहीं करता वो बासी ताज़ी लगती है। सर ये स्प्रे है जो गाड़ियों पर लगाते हैं, गाड़ी चमक जाती है, इसलिए हम सब्जियों पे, बासी सब्जियों पे लगाते हैं, वो ताज़ी जैसी लग जाती है और फिर वो मंडी में ले जाते हैं तो वो आसानी से बिक जाती है। ये हम ही नहीं करते, सारा ही ज़मींदार करता है जो सब्जी को बोता है। खेत से सब्जी तोड़ के लाते हैं और होदे में घेर देते हैं, उसे धो धा के और रंग लगा के और फिर वो जमा के और सुबह मंडी ले जाते हैं। रंग तो ये है जी, वो तो हरी सब्जी में मिलती है जी, और किसी में नहीं, ज़्यादातर हरी सब्जी में। तोरी हुई जी, भिंडी हुई, परमल हुई, बीन्स हुई, इसमें हरा रंग मिला देते हैं और वो ताज़ी सब्जी लगती है। बाज़ार में दवाई वाली दुकान रहती है, उस पे से ले आते हैं हम, उस बेल में हम लगाते हैं, वो छोटी लौकी बड़ी हो जाती है, फिर आसानी से हम उसे सुबह तोड़ के बेक आते हैं और ना लगाए तो हम फिर वो 1 हफ्ता लेती है। 8-10 साल से इस काम कर रहे हैं। ये महंगाई बढ़ गई है, इसलिए हमने भी गुजारा, बच्चे पालने हैं। गलत क्या समझे जी, ये तो हम अब फायदो सोचते हैं, ताज़ी सब्जी लोग फिर वो खरीदते नहीं है, बढ़िया सब्जी को भी ख़राब बताते हैं, इसलिए हम ताज़ी सब्जी बनाते हैं, वो आसानी से बिक जाती है, कोई इसमें नुकसान तो नहीं है।
这山东临沂的桃我们拉到沈阳去卖，吃桃要注意打的全是防腐剂啊！看看这打药，
敢吃吗？这样打会不会中毒啊？不管它，我靠，不管它，你们只管卖呀！这气味太呛人。
以后请大家注意，再不要直接拿出来就吃，一定要清洗干净。请大家看一下，上面里面放的有醋干剂，直接吃把肠胃都烧坏了，请大家一定要注意。这个里面全是药，加热系统，上色。
This is dipping cucumbers in chemical hormones so they can grow quickly. In China, restaurant owners have been using poppy husk to attract customers for more than 20 years. It has been banned numerous times to no avail. The poppy husk powder can produce a unique aroma and make the food tasty. Regular consumption can get people addicted to the extent of toxic side effects. Despite knowing the harm, businesses still use it to make money. In communist China, the level of toxic food hazards is out of control, including the following: baby formula adulterated with melamine, meat products with prohibited lean meat extract or clenbuterol, rice with excessive cadmium content, noodles made with ink and paraffin, mushrooms bleached with phosphor, flour with large amounts of talc added, gutter oil produced from kitchen waste, dyed steam buns containing large amounts of food additives, fake eggs, fake wine, toxic dried fruit, poisoned ginger.
但是我煮完了，我发现呐，这个口感也跟鸡蛋一样，但是里头没黄。我心想要一个没黄也行，怎么个个都没鸡蛋呢？鸡蛋黄呢？我就喂这狗，你看，哎，小狗吃鸡蛋吗？它不吃。人吃不出来，你看小狗不吃，看见没有？但是你看这个是我超市买的鸡蛋，你看小狗吃，你看这小狗肯定吃。哎，人看不出真假来，狗能看出来，知道吗？你看这是有黄的，你看啊，这是有黄的，是吧？看见没有？小狗吃了，看见没有？你看它吃那黄了，它也吃那白了。黄黄，过来，你看，蛋白它也吃，蛋黄它也吃，你看，你看没有？这个狗不说瞎话。你知道吗？人现在弄那鸡蛋，个个没黄，吃的口感也一样。你说这中国人干的事儿啊，全世界人类没有的事儿。中国人家骗人骗的自己，中国人自己骗自己了，知道吗？你甭说人美国这个那个的，你自己都不把自己当人了。
没籽儿的葡萄怎么回事？没籽儿的葡萄不都粘样了吗？粘的嘛呀？粘的避孕药。吃完孩子不好吧？吃完孩子不好。那绝对没籽的就咱避孕药了，不能生孩子是吧？啥也不给。
纸板用好一点的啊，好一点的纸板打出来更好一些。然后呢，我们再少放一点好的这个艾绒，粗的放，一定要放粗的艾绒。这个放粗的艾绒是为了目的是为了什么呢？让这等下打出来的绒，它有二草真正艾草的味道啊，起到调味的作用。然后这个成本很低。来，大家看看这个艾绒怎么样？看起来是不是很漂亮？你闻闻味道也是一样的。我们可以再打精细一点，你更看不出来。有时候你就知道为什么这个纸箱子这个需求量为什么那么大，因为它功效远不止这些。比方说，我们可以加点肥肉进去一打，它就变成肉馅了，可以做包子。这个跟肥肉打起来就像瘦肉一样，所以说外面的包子不要乱吃那些便宜的包子。你闻一闻味道，闻一闻味道，看一看颜色，这个艾绒咋样？你一般人你是分辨不出来的啊。
看一看，我现在传到网上了啊，让你们大家来看一看。
这就是我们平常在超市买的咸菜的黄瓜，这是腌的黄瓜，下面臭水池，看到没有？看到没有？丧尽天良啊！我操！
你们瞅瞅啊，这果汁啊、饮料啊，就别喝了。这是啥玩意儿啊？瞅瞅。
这个做洗面奶呀，
洗面奶、泡沫、肥皂粉、肥皂，这个才有，生活才有，黄油、洗衣粉，还有一点。
他们说他掏的地沟油有官方批准的，我也不知道现在哪个官方能批准掏的地沟油。他说他们掏的地沟油有合法手续的，我希望有关部门能检查一下他们合法的手续在哪，希望大家能看到这视频。都给我转播一下。